consultation, which is likely to be through your voice survey. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much to Alex and to Councillor Robbins for the response. We now are going to move to written questions from members. These can be found published in the addendum. We've got 15 minutes in total set aside for member questions, and once we've reached time, I'll move on to the next item, and written responses will be sent to any questions that have not yet been asked. We have received 18 member questions for this meeting, so I'll rotate through those members that are in attendance today, asking each of you for your first 2 questions as the fairest way to manage them. And then if there's time, I'll take further questions again in rotation. So in terms of members that are present and the order of questions that I've got here, I believe Councillor Hill, you are up first.
Hiya, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Thanks. My questions are on local government reorganisation. So my first question is, can you explain how the administration came to the figure of £52.4 million per year in annual net benefits from your local government reorganisation proposals? What was the total cost of reorganisation before factoring in financial benefits, such as the 26 million in agile unitaries? Other analysis by the County Council's network suggested that councils needed to be at least £500,000 of size to make any savings, so I'm keen to understand where this disparity came from.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. I'm going to ask Councillor Hewitt to respond.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. The figure of £52.4 million comes from the financial modelling undertaken for us by Ignite. Their method is set out in the appendices to our proposal. It used published financial data for every council in Sussex, with common assumptions applied across all options so that results can be compared on a like-for-like basis. The model works in 3 stages. First, it sets out the baseline financial pressures if nothing changes. Secondly, it applied the recurring savings from reorganisation. And thirdly, it added the one-off costs of transition. The £52.4 million annual benefit is the net result once a steady state is reached. The breakdown is £20.2 million from removing duplication in services, 26 million from running people services at the right scale. That's the sweet spot of 300 to 400,000 residents referenced in People 2 research. 4.8 million from senior management consolidation. 2.1 million from member and election costs, and that's offset by minus 9.8 million disaggregation disbenefits. The one-off costs for the 5 unitary option are estimated at between 168 million and 197 million. Government policy is that these costs are funded through eligible capital receipts, not through day-to-day service budgets. On the comparison with the County Council's network, their analysis was national and used broad population thresholds of around 500,000. Our modelling is Sussex specific, uses local data and applies more recent evidence. People 2's work shows efficiency benefits at the 300,000 to 400,000 level, which is the scale our proposal uses. The Essex proposal published this month also makes the same point about efficiency gains in smaller unitaries. So the difference is method. We have been transparent about both the costs and the benefits. These will be tested further through the statutory process before any final decision is taken.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hewitt. Councillor Hill, your second question.
Thanks. Still unsure about what the sweet spot is or evidence for that, but my second question is also local government reorganisation. So Falmer lies in Lewes parliamentary constituency and is being proposed to be included in the Brighton and Hove unitary or unitary A. If the proposed if the purpose of the proposal is of bringing Peacehaven, East Saltdean and Telscombe Cliffs into a larger Brighton Hove City Council for the purpose of aligning parliamentary constituency boundaries, then this other change seems contrary to that purpose. So could you explain what appears to be a contradiction in aims? And there seems to be concerns also about the splitting up of a district council boundary as it's part of Kingston Ward currently, Falmer. Although I do want to add that I thought Councillor Alexander's points last night were quite well made as well regarding this.
Thanks, Councillor Hill. Agreed on the last point. Councillor Hewitt.
Thank you again, Councillor Hill. So our proposal was not about parliamentary boundaries. It was about lived geography and resilience. Peacehaven, Telscombe and East Saltdean are tied into the Brighton and Hove corridor through daily life. Falmer is linked just as strongly through the universities, the Amex Stadium, hospitals and transport. Both moves follow the same principle, which is to align councils to where people actually live their lives. Regarding splitting districts, whole district options left us with councils that were either too big or too fragile. The government invitation allowed refinements where justified, and using them gave us 5 balanced councils of around 300 to 400,000 residents. That balance is what makes the structure sustainable for the long term.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hewitt. Next up, I think we've got Councillor Shanks.
Thank you. My question's on King Alfred. So will you assure us that there will be some affordable and social housing on the King Alfred site?
Councillor Robin.
Thanks for the question. Thanks you, Chair. Thanks for the question, Councillor Shanks. As detailed in the report, the valuation used for financial modelling is based on a scheme of planning compliant level of 40% affordable housing, and any application for residential development for the remainder of the site will be assessed against the policies in the development plan, including policy CP20, which sets out the criteria for provision for affordable housing.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. Councillor Shanks, your second question.
Okay, so will you present the full combined scheme, leisure centre and housing together, so the public can properly understand its effect on the promenade, sea view, skyline and seafront character before any further approvals are granted?
And thank you again, Councillor Shanks. One of the key lessons that was learned from the previous King Alfred projects is the importance of keeping the council-led delivery of the sports and leisure centre separate and distinct from the residential development. The aim of this is to avoid creating a complex dependencies which prevented previous projects from successfully progressing. With that in mind, the current itinerary of the project is focused on the delivery of the sports and leisure centre. That focus has been helped by current project progress further and faster than the previous projects. The planning application is scheduled to be submitted before the end of the year, with work beginning on site early next year. This approach also enables the council to keep the current centre open for as long as possible while the development of the new centre progresses. The design of the new facility, and in particular the orientation of the site, has been developed to preserve sight lines out to sea from the street leading north from Kingsway, Hove Street and Valence Gardens. The planning application for the residential part of the site will be considered separately. Any application for residential development will be assessed against the council's planning policies, including policy SA1 in the City Plan Part 1, which set out planning policy for the seafront, including the King Alfred site. Thanks again.
Thanks very much, Councillor Robbins and Councillor Shanks, for your questions. Next, I've got Councillor West, who I think is online.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you can hear me okay. LGR is proving to be a textbook example of how not to bring forward change. The case for LGR was not proven by government, but predicated on a partial report by the County Council's network, adopted without question into the government's manifesto. The Cabinet report states the scale of indicative savings over 10 years are fairly marginal compared with the growing cost pressures faced by authorities, yet transition would create colossal unfunded upfront costs, estimates of which could prove wildly understated when competing nationwide for delivery capacity resources. There seems no appetite for reorganisation amongst the public, who wish to retain local identity and democratic decentralisation while preferring government funding be committed to restore and expand services. Given the relevant ministers have now departed post, now is the moment to call for a moratorium of this hasty, unwelcome, yet significant upheaval. Does the Cabinet agree?
Thank you, Councillor West. We can ask Councillor Hewitt to respond.
Thank you, Councillor West, for your question. On the foundations of the process, government has invited councils in Sussex to bring forward proposals. This is not something that has been imposed from the County Council's Networks report. Our submission has been built on financial modelling and tested against alternatives. With costs and the benefits, the report is clear that the pressures facing councils are very significant and that reorganisation alone will not resolve them. The modelling does show, though, that once transition is complete, there would be real financial benefits worth over £50 million each year. We have also been transparent about the one-off costs of the change. Our role has been to show what the range of costs might be based on experience elsewhere, so that ministers can weigh these properly against the benefits. On the public appetite, it is too early to draw conclusions. There has not yet been a statutory consultation. If government chooses to move forward, that is when residents across Sussex will have their say. What we have done is engage locally on Brighton and Hove's footprint so that our city has a clear voice if change is taken forward. On time, changes in ministers do not alter the fact that the invitation to submit proposals remains. Our role is to make sure Brighton and Hove is represented and that the interests of our residents are safeguarded, whatever decisions are ultimately taken. Calling for a moratorium now would mean stepping back and leaving others to decide about the future of local government in Sussex without our input. We do not think that would be right. Our approach is to put forward a credible and evidence-based option and to be open about both the risks and the opportunities.
Thanks, Councillor Hewitt. Councillor West, your second question.
Yes, thank you. I was just going to say, I think the government didn't do any homework before it embarked on this project and forced us into this. My next question is question 10 on the King Alfred. Given the huge financial and service delivery uncertainties created by the government's LGR initiative, coupled with the council's increasingly perilous financial position, would it not be prudent to pause investment in major sports facilities until we know what communities will be being served and to see what means the council will have to meet its ongoing financial commitment?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. So do I understand by that the Greens are actually calling for a pause in the King Alfred redevelopment?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just asking.
Oh, sorry, that's the way I understood the question. It does say, would it not be prudent to pause an investment?
Finds itself in, and the uncertainty,
yeah, but it does say,
total uncertainty.
It does say, would it not be prudent?
Will be in because of LGR.
Okay.
Sure.
But the question does say, would it not be prudent to pause?
Councillor Robbins, if you could answer the question, please.
I'll answer the question, but it does say, would it not be prudent to pause the investment? So I just wondered if that was the Greens' position on it. But anyway, the need to replace the current King Alfred facility is pressing and urgent. This is explained in some detail in the paper considered by Cabinet at this meeting in July 2024, and thereafter by the Place and Overall Scrutiny Committee at their meeting in August 2024. The condition of the current facility means that ongoing maintenance and running costs remain high. Furthermore, there is a continuing risk of forced closure due to the condition of the facility. With all that in mind, it's especially important that delivery of the project continues at a pace, as shown in the Cabinet paper. The new facility offers a potential to generate much greater levels of revenue than the current facilities. This in turn means that the project revenue for cost to the Council to service the borrowing for the facility will be less than proposed in the Council paper agreed in July last year, as explained in response to question 3. Okay, thanks very much, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. And next we have Councillor Macleay, who I think is also online.
Yes, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? You can. Okay, good.
Yes, we can hear you, sorry.
I had a message saying that my mic wasn't working, so that's good, you can hear me. Right, question 12. While the recommissioning of the street outreach service rightly considers financial sustainability and value for money, how will the council ensure the quality of service? What mechanisms will be in place to ensure providers deliver a quality service, especially those with multiple compound needs?
Thank you for your question, a very important one. So the new specification for the service has residents with multiple compound needs at the very centre. The street outreach service will form part of an integrated care team, and that they are response to those with multiple compound needs in partnership with NHS Sussex, which is very important. The new specification has set KPIs around reduction of rough sleeping in terms of overall numbers and specific KPIs around those experiencing long-term rough sleeping, as these individuals are more likely to experience multiple compound needs. The service will be monitored through the KPIs alongside biannual reporting, covering topics such as, but not limited to, integration of service user feedback, collaboration and community integration, and how training and best practice are best embedded into the service. This sits alongside periodic contract reviews, which include service user, stakeholder and staff feedback alongside KPI performance. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Councillor Macleay and Councillor Williams. We are at the end of time, but as I said at the outset, all questions that have not been answered today in person, all councillors will receive written responses. Thanks very much, everybody, for your questions and for attending today. We now move to matters referred to the executive, and no matters have been referred to Cabinet for our consideration. So that leaves us to representations from opposition members. And I have Councillor Hill first. Would you like to present the representation on item 37, local government reorganisation? Please, you have 3 minutes to present.
Thank you. At yesterday's special council meeting, I claimed that no council administration outside of Brighton and Hove had supported the specific boundary proposals in Labour's local government reorganisation, which was presented yesterday and today. Councillor Hewitt claimed in response to me that Worthing, Ada, Hastings, Rother and Wealden councils all support Brighton Hove's proposal. I believe this was an incorrect
I'm just going to jump in here, Councillor Hill.
Statement.
I'm just going to jump in. My apologies, but that is incorrect. Councillor Hewitt was clear that elected representatives in those councils have expressed support, but he was not saying that those councils are in support. And it's just very important that we are accurate when we're discussing local government reorganisation.
What is accurate is that all of the administrations of those councils do not support the proposals in the local government reorganisation. Let's begin with Rother District. Rother District Council's Cabinet voted to support the One East Sussex proposal yesterday. Regarding your proposals, Rother leader Councillor Doug Oliver said, quote, "I'm appalled that Brighton had the temerity to come in at this late stage and that, quote, it was embarrassing. I asked about this and he messaged me today to say that Councillor Hewitt's statements he felt were inaccurate, although it is true that Rother District's 3 Labour cabinet members out of 10 tried and failed to pass an amendment which was supportive of Brighton and Hove's 5 unitary proposal. Similarly, Hastings is also not supporting Brighton and Hove's model. Hastings Cabinet have submitted to government their support for the 1 East Sussex model, but they have also submitted 2 other business cases for government consideration, neither of which is the same as Brighton and Hove's proposal, but both of which do assess the benefits of having 2 or 5 smaller sized unitaries just in East Sussex. The latter is based in a district and borough boundary case, but those in my view are too small and not financially viable. I believe your coastal East Sussex unitary proposal B also isn't financially viable. I asked Wealden District Council's co-leader, Councillor Rachel Millwood, if she supported your proposals, and she said, quote, "No, it's impossible to do so given total absence of discussion of boundaries or analysis of financial assumptions, etc. However, Wealden have dropped support for the 1 East Sussex proposal there. As I said yesterday, all the districts and boroughs in West Sussex want 2 councils for West Sussex, as do I, with them wanting Chichester District Council in the same unitary authority as Arran, Ada and Worthing councils. Your proposal is similar but different in that you suggest that Chichester should be with Crawley, Horsham and Mid Sussex. Your Labour colleagues in Ada and Worthing therefore haven't supported your proposals, and they also haven't taken a view as to your proposals for East Sussex and our city. 1 unitary authority for West Sussex is too big, but please listen to West Sussex's districts and boroughs rather than asking the government to draw a line in the map nobody has called for. Therefore, no council administration outside of Brighton and Hove has given support for this proposal, although you're right to say there has been members who were elected who have supported it. So would Cabinet like to correct the statements from yesterday?
Your time is up now, Councillor Hill. Thanks very much. And I think I've been clear that you have misrepresented the statement from yesterday. So in answer to your final question, Councillor Macleay, would you like to make your representation on item 40, Brilliant Brighton Business Improvement District? Please, yes. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Small and medium-sized businesses are a huge contributor to our local economy. They're facing a perfect storm of soaring costs, VAT pressures, and a growing sense of insecurity. Shoplifting is on the rise, and many business owners feel vulnerable with a lack of visible police presence. They're rightly asking for more support from the organisations meant to represent and serve them. The bid has potential, but it's underutilised. Many traders don't understand what it does or how it benefits them. There is a strong call for the bid to do better promotion around the North Lane as a unique, vibrant shopping destination that it is, full of character, creativity and community spirit. When you speak with business owners in the North Lane, you hear brilliant ideas. These are entrepreneurs and innovators. They should be included in economic development discussions locally. One shop owner on Bond Street suggested a festive immersive experience like Columbia Road's Christmas Wednesdays in London, with carolers and buskers on every corner, mulled wine and elegant decorations. A winter event like that could draw visitors from across the southeast to boost overnight stays and bring much needed trade to our streets. But right now, many local shops feel unsupported. They're sceptical. They don't see the council or the bid standing visibly behind them. To change that, we need to build well-funded campaigns across posters, press, social media, championing our independence and encouraging people to shop local. It's encouraging to see the bid expanding to include Trafalgar Street and Sydney Street. These streets should be a key link from Brighton Station into the heart of the North Lane. We should also explore how Visit Brighton and the bid could work more closely together to create a stronger, more coordinated marketing operation. When you walk down many British high streets, you see the same chains: Tesco, Express, Costa, Boots, rinse and repeat. But Brighton is different. We're a hub of creativity, and we have a responsibility to protect these unique local businesses. When you spend £10 in an independent cafe, over £5 stays in the local community. Spend it in a chain, and just £1.40 remains. This difference matters. It's the difference between thriving communities and boarded up shops. Planning laws may not currently protect our shopping streets from corporate creep, so we need to act. And my ask today is, how can the bid work more closely with businesses in the community to solve the challenges that they face now? And what more can we do as a council to support the independent businesses that make Brighton so special? And I'd love to see BID and the council to run a campaign that supports the concept of shopping local and the impact that individual purchasing decisions have on our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maclay. We will move on now to substantive papers. And first up, we've got local government reorganisation, and I call on Councillor Hewitt. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. The report set out this afternoon is for Cabinet to consider approving the representative councils for a devolved Sussex, a 5-unitary proposal document for submission to the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government by the 26th of September. And I'd like to give my sincere thanks and gratitude to the officers and our consultants who have worked extremely hard on this. In February of this year, the Secretary of State invited principal authorities in East Sussex, including us here in Brighton and Hove and in West Sussex, to bring forward proposals for local government reorganisation. In March, following a short initial engagement exercise with residents, a Cabinet approved our Council's interim response, which, as you will recall, had a strong focus on how important Brighton and Hove's unique identity is to residents, and there was appetite that if our unitary authority did need to grow in size, it should be on a modest scale. We received feedback on our interim response in June, which has helped guide and frame the proposals you have before you. Following submissions being received, the government will be shortlisting against their criteria before putting valid proposals out to a statutory public consultation. The 6 criteria standards which have been set are outlined in section 3.8 of the report. The 5-unitary authority model, which we are proposing, meets these criteria. We have proposed a single tier of local government across all areas of Sussex. The proposal of each unitary authority having between 300,000 and 400,000 residents each will be the right size to achieve efficiencies, improve capacity and withstand financial shocks. The boundaries we have drawn followed lived corridor residents take for work, leisure and other activities, ensuring high quality, sustainable services. 5 councils will collaborate as peers of a similar size. The evolution is supported by these proposals. Having 5 balanced authorities to join the mayoral authority would ensure that it functions well. And this ensures community engagement and neighbourhood empowerment by preserving full parish and town councils within the footprints. Details of a public consultation and engagement exercises are detailed in section 5. Along with the month-long public consultation, we hosted drop-in sessions and attended public meetings. There are full and further details published in Appendix 2. In addition to this item has been to the Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee 3 times, and there was a special full council to debate the topic yesterday evening. I'll briefly touch on the proposed unitary which Brighton and Hove are proposed to be part of. As seen in the report, it is proposed that we merge with East Saltdean, Telscombe and Peacehaven to the east and with Falmer Parish to the northeast. Areas which have shared identities and access the same services and amenities. But more importantly, this proposal takes an all-Sussex approach. We have considered every area in the county to ensure that their proposed unitary authority is as strong as the next, ensuring that they are coherent, sensible and sustainable, whilst being recognisable as communities to residents. Unitary authorities are there to provide 700 services to residents, and we feel that this model creates authorities which are large enough to be financially sustainable, but small enough to deliver the services across their footprint at an efficient rate and retain their unique identities. Thank you. I'll be interested to hear the views of Cabinet on this very important subject, and as a Cabinet advisor, I advise you all to vote for the recommendations in this report. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hewitt. Comments and questions on local government reorganisation. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hewitt, for the advice, which we'll carefully consider right now. But thank you all also for the work that you have led alongside Councillor Sankey in doing the engagement on this. And also thank you to the officers and consultants for the significant work that's gone into it. I think it's worth just taking a quick step back and not to repeat things I've said in previous meetings, but to see this within the overall context of what the government and indeed the LGA for many years think should happen in this country in terms of its governance, and to remind colleagues where we start from is that we're a very, very centralised country, as we have said before, compared to our European neighbours. We're an extremely centralised country in that decisions and the allocations of funds are done in a much, much more centralised way, i.e. by national government, in this country versus many other of our European countries, where they have levels of subnational, regional or local government that are making decisions and allocating funds and driving their local economies and places in a way that just isn't happening in most parts of this country. And so from that starting point, what I think the government are trying to do, and really what the LGA have been arguing for some time, is to get more money and power down to a local level. And then you then have to think about, well, how are we going to do that? And the way that the government are moving towards, I think, is basically coherent, which is to say that we want to have devolution everywhere. So that's powers coming down from national government to a devolved level. And that devolved level will clearly have to be of a greater size than a small district council. And so that's the creation of devolved authorities, mayoral combined authorities. Then underneath that, what the government are trying to do is say that we've got a patchwork around the country of tier 1 and tier 2, unitaries. You've got old metropolitan districts, which are basically unitaries. But for it to work coherently, and by the way, for the public to understand what their government is at various stages, they want to move to devolved mayoral authorities and beneath that unitary authorities that make sense. I think broadly speaking, that does make sense as a plan. We've heard a lot from opposition councillors, which is entirely fine for them to raise about the evidence base and behind it. But at a high level, I think that principle is about right and mirrors much more closely the more successful models, in my opinion, of local and subnational government that we see on the continent. I think it will be one element that over a very long period of time, we're not talking about this solving some crisis next year, over a very long period of time, that structure and that level of devolved funding and power and a better structure of councils underneath the mayoral authorities will end up having a more equal country, in my opinion. We'll end up having better managed local services. We'll end up having infrastructure funding developed, directed at the right place locally versus decisions being made nationally. And I think it's broadly the right policy. So I'm supportive both of the overall thrust, which we'll be discussing next week in devolution, and the idea of moving to unitaries. Within that, we've been asked to submit proposals. And one of the bits that I struggle with a little bit in what we heard from opposition councillors yesterday is all sorts of things on process, which are totally justified, all things on evidence base, which are important questions. No real suggestion about what they actually think. And as a reminder, what we're voting on today is not the model. We're not voting today on the model for Sussex. We're voting on, shall we submit an idea to government? By the way, lots of other people are submitting ideas to government. And so it's this bizarre concept that just because we haven't agreed with other people in the county, that we shouldn't submit what we think is correct and right for the county. They'll be submitting theirs. We'll keep talking. We will need to keep talking, whatever happens. And then the government will look at what's been submitted and decide what they think is right. And then we'll go to statutory consultation, which will be interesting and important. In my mind, yeah, 5 unitaries makes a lot more sense for the county of Sussex. I think that will be a more balanced model and will unlock, facilitate, and make fairer the mayoral authority that gets created. I really do think that 5 will be better for the county, will be better for communities, and will be better for the operation of that mayoral combined authority. In terms of Brighton and Hove and what we're submitting, I won't rehash what I said yesterday at full council, but I'm personally really pleased and excited of what we're submitting. I think it makes total sense. Ignore process and structure and finances and all that stuff. I think it makes total sense from a community and place perspective. As Councillor Alexander drew out yesterday and may well do again today, the case of Falmouth just really does make sense in my mind. It is effectively, in many ways, already part of the city. The council owns much of the land within that village, even though it's not within the boundaries of the city council. It's highly connected to 2 of our landmark institutions, the university and the football club, and I think it makes great sense. And I think it could be a great partnership. This is not about anybody taking anyone over. This is about saying, can we form a new structure where those communities come together and work together and try and achieve things together? And then to the east of the city, as I have said, I'm really pleased that we're submitting a proposal that looks to combine with the areas currently east of our boundary in Saltdean, so East Saltdean, Telscombe and Peacehaven. I know plenty of people that live there and spent lots of time in these places when I grew up. They are very connected to Brighton. They're very connected to Brighton. Some people, including lots that didn't take part in the consultation or the engagement exercise, if asked what they think about joining Brighton, will respond, well, we already live in Brighton, don't we? Because those connections are very, very strong. The connections are strong in terms of travel, the connection is strong in terms of employment and education, but family and friendships. And I think it's a really great opportunity to create a new unitary authority that brings these places together so we can work on issues that impact the 2 areas intrinsically, transport being a huge one. Facilities being a huge one, like play facilities and leisure facilities, and education being another one. We have to acknowledge that there has been scepticism and outright opposition in some quarters to these proposals. We have to totally acknowledge that, and then if this is taken forward, and we don't know whether it will be taken forward, keep working on that and understanding that through consultation and keep discussing. And by the way, I think we need to, if this does move forward, start making the case for it, because we were somewhat hamstrung by an initial engagement exercise. I think we need to make the case to residents across the city and in the areas that we might be looking to merge with of the benefits of what a unitary council with their voices, their experiences, their passions, their insights, all working together to try and improve things in these very connected areas. So overall, I'm very supportive of the proposals that are being put in and think we have a chance to create a unitary council that reflects communities and can do some really, really important things. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor Taylor. I'm going to come to Councillor Okins.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, and I'm glad Councillor Taylor sort of recapped a little bit and just put today into context, which is obviously that we're not voting on a final way forward. We're essentially saying that we're going to put our proposal into central government alongside with other proposals from the other upper tier authorities. And obviously those proposals will be considered side by side, and one of them may be put forward to consultation by central government, or something that resembles one of them might be. So I suppose the key thing here is why do we think that our proposal is broadly the right way forward? And I certainly am of the view that the reason for that is that it's based on a pretty fundamental principle, which I think is reflected in the title of the document that we're proposing to submit, which is Representative Councils for a Devolved Sussex. In other words, how do you get this whole system set up to be representative and as representative as possible, and in doing so to get the best out of the evolution and the devolved authority in Sussex? So, to my mind, very large unitaries of potentially 500,000 or more, they might make sense in some places, such as large densely populated urban locations. But I think when those populations are spread over a wider geographical area, the risk is that local government can begin to feel quite distant and quite disconnected from the communities that it serves. Local government, by definition, should be local. And we're very fortunate here, I would suggest, in Brighton and Hove to have residents so engaged in local matters, and many of whom come to this chamber to express their views and represent their communities. And we're very lucky because for most of our residents, it's a short distance on public transport, or indeed as the UK's, I think, most walkable city. And for many of them, it's just a pleasant stroll. But what if that chamber was much further afield? What would that do to local democracy and local representation? And on the issue of population size, you know, it's not just about population now, but population in the future, including just the near future. And the area, for example, represented currently by East Sussex County Council serves around 550,000 residents, but that population is projected to grow to almost 620,000 in the next 15 years alone, which is an increase of about 12%, well over the growth projected for Brighton and Hove, which is more like 8.5% over a longer period, sort of 25 years. The core principle of our proposal is that the residents of Sussex would be best served by councils that are close to and connected to their residents. And crucially, I think councils that can sit around the table in the new mayoral authority as equal partners representing the distinct communities in which they're rooted. So that's what's led us to our proposal for 5 unitary authorities, each with residents, each with a population of about 300 to 400,000. And the proposal does, you know, it does involve some complexity in the short term, but this is not a short-term decision. You know, this is a chance to set up the region to succeed long into the future, to put us on a more sustainable financial footing and unleash the potential of devolution for generations to come. Local democracy matters and representation matters, and I believe that our proposal not only delivers the efficiency and financial sustainability required, but will also ensure that local identities are retained and represented, ultimately getting the best from everything that devolution has to offer. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor Akins. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to address 2 aspects of this in particular. The first one is the often repeated remark that this is a reduction in democracy and it creates a democratic deficit. We're a unitary authority, and even before I became a councillor, long before when I moved here, I felt much more connected to my councillors. I knew who my councillors were. I knew what they did, whereas 17 years in West Sussex is no reflection on the councillors there, but the complexity of the system meant that I had very little understanding of exactly who did what. And I know that when talking with colleagues in areas with 2-tier authorities, one of their most common complaints is having to constantly refer requests from residents and complaints from residents to the other authority, because they do not have the capacity to resolve that issue and to follow it up because it sits on the other tier. It's, I'd almost say, designed to be as cumbersome and difficult as possible, this division of responsibilities, especially when some get devolved back down to a district or borough authority. It confuses residents. One of the things that I think is really, really helpful with our unitary system is that residents know who to talk to. Who do they praise and who do they blame? Who do they complain to and who do they ask questions of? They know who their councillors are, they know who their administration is, and they know where the responsibilities sit. And that creates a clarity for residents, which is lacking in 2-tier areas. So I actually think this increases democracy, and I would argue that those councillors who are criticising unitaries as being less democratic and taking representation away from residents I do not understand how they haven't built strong relationships with their residents already, because that is what we are about. And I believe that my Labour colleagues, that we have all worked extremely hard to get to know our residents, our community organisations. We have those relationships, and they know
who to talk to. So I think it is actually bringing democracy closer to people because it's one level, not two. And the other thing I'd like to address is the fact that we are asked to make a proposal, again, along with my colleagues. This is our suggestion for what feels like a fair way to bring a reorganization and efficiency to local government, which has been lacking. And this should ultimately create long-term a more streamlined, a more effective way of delivering services for everybody's, for all our residents and for the residents and neighbouring authorities. This is our proposal. It may get accepted, may not get accepted, but I would like to commend both Councillor Sankey and Councillor Hewitt on what I think has been fantastic work. And there's been a lot of dialogue, a lot of consultation, a lot of partnership working with neighbouring authorities. And I think we've made a good proposal and I completely support it. Whether it gets accepted is not up to us, but we are doing what we have been asked to do. And I think that's really important, is that we are working in the way that the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government has asked us to do. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Miller. I'm going to ask Councillor Meaton to come in next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation, Councillor Hewitt. I'm from Sussex. I'm very proud of that, and I grew up in the wider region. Spent the first two decades of my life in Crowborough, which is the largest inland town in East Sussex and the High Weald. I know different parts of Sussex, the whole very clear sense of identity and connection. And I think it's really important to get this right. So I've been very much interested and involved in reviewing this as this has progressed. But I do want to pick up on Councillor Miller's point about democratic deficit. And that's a principal reason why I support the 5 unitary authority, where we have a range of between 300 and 400,000 residents in each, rather than what is an imbalance of what might be 280,000 in Brighton and Hove, compared to up to 900,000 in a single unitary for West Sussex, for instance. Although one might argue that Brighton and Hove would have a benefit of 3 times the democratic representation in that context, I don't think that's entirely fair, and I don't think we would support that. Even under the 4 unitary model, as Councillor Rokin set out, the contrast between 280,000 and 550,000 grown to 650,000 residents seems incongruous. A more sustainable and fairer approach is surely one to support and achieve efficiencies and connections that residents wish to be part of. And that sort of brings me back to the consultation, or perhaps a lack of consultation, or fair consultation within this process. From a review of the feedback from our public consultation on this proposal, including public meetings for parts and in West Saltdean, for instance, which I know Councillor Hewitt and Councillor Sankey attended. Is it fair that the question wasn't well presented to East Saltdean, Peacehaven, Telscombe and Cliff residents, in that the proposition was not this option or continue with the status quo. That simply was not the proposition. I don't believe that was clearly stated. The proposal set out by the central government is to change it so all local authorities will become unitaries. And so the removal of the districts and boroughs, so Lewis District Council, will no longer exist. And so essentially the residents of, say, Peacehaven and East Saltdean, etc., will become either a part of a very large East Sussex unitary authority, assembly on, or a set or 2 unitaries, which have been presented here, but very much on the edge of that, with a disconnect between that and many other parts of their unitary authority. Whereas much closer to their home is our unitary authority of Brighton and Hove, as it stands at the moment. And that's what brings me down to the focus on transport. So the residents of Peacehaven, Telscombe Cliffs and Saltdean, East Saltdean as it is, are very much connected to the city by the A259 major road network, which is great public transport connections. The buses, which are run by Brighton and Hove buses, run from those communities, connect well to the city centre here, and as stated by others here, those residents feel very much connected and part of our city life. And so I think as an authority, their connections with us are already in some ways established, and be very logical and quite wise to bring those part into this connection, formalise some of that connections, and to have a better arrangement for their residents, rather than necessarily some distance away. So I think it's only fair to present that. But the other point I want to highlight about transport, that relation to the proposition of including Falmer Village in this proposal. I think that's a very solid proposal. When we look at some of the developments, even literally about to happen on the 23 bus route, where after a petition signed by 1,200 residents and spearheaded to a part by Councillor Allen here as well, we actually listened to residents in Woodindean and Falmer, and now have a bus service starting from this Sunday connecting those two communities. And also starting on Sunday, have this 3X service, an express service connecting Hangleton, Hove Station, Brighton Station, through all the way to Falmer. And so that connection with Falmer Village is incredibly strong, and it's getting stronger through our listening to residents and in strengthening our transport connections and our community ties. So I do see the real value in presenting that, and I will be very much supporting this 5 unitary proposal and those inclusions of Falmer Village, the East Saltdean, Telscombe Cliffs and Peacehaven. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mooten, for that update and all of the work you're doing on transport for our area, and that included in these proposals. Councillor Allen.
Thank you. And I echo my colleagues' thanks to officers and the consultants for this really detailed and impressive work. I'd also like to thank Councillor Hewitt and Councillor Sankey for their work in bringing this forward. I'd also like to add on the record a thanks to Councillors Earthy and Fishley for their work in facilitating a lot of the engagement with residents, especially in Saltdean. But I have the strange accolade of being the only Brighton and Hove City Councillor to have stood for all 3 types of authority. I've stood for a borough council, a county council, and a unitary council. And so I learned firsthand how awkward and inaccessible the 2-tier structure was for residents and candidates alike. When I was campaigning as a borough candidate, if someone wanted to complain to me about a highways problem, I'd have to say, nothing I can do. Then when I go back to the same door as a candidate for the county council, and they said, well, now I have a housing problem, nothing I can do, different council, even though it's the same person bothering them at the door. But that's why it's so refreshing to be a unitary authority councillor, because as Councillor Miller said, it's all my problem and I can help with pretty much anything. And so it's simply a better, more efficient and form of local government for representation, for service delivery, and for strategic planning, like Councillor Mooten was talking about with transport. But beyond this, so I really welcome the Labour government's move to abolishing the 2-tier system. it will deliver much better outcomes for residents. But beyond this, 5 unitaries, I truly believe is the best model for Sussex. We have a large county with a beloved national park stretching right across from east to west, with charming towns and villages sprinkled throughout and punctuated by our vibrant city in the south. Having only 3 unitary authorities would lead to remote representation and a stretched understanding of some of the really local and hyper-local issues. Like many others, I attended many of the public consultations and acknowledged that much of the scepticism that came through in the consultation related to where Brighton and Hove City Council has fallen short in the past decade, everything from missed bin collections up to the disastrous I360 decision. And we need to acknowledge that. And all I think I can say to reassure those people is we strive to learn from those mistakes, not to repeat them, and strive to improve services and continue on our mission to make this a city to be proud of. I strongly welcome the proposal to include areas to the east of the city into the Brighton and Hove City Council boundary. Having grown up in and now represent Wooding Dean, I understand these places well. East Saltdean, Telscombe and Peacehaven would frankly be better served as part of our small city with a big heart, as Councillor Goddard always says, rather than being in the corner of a massive East Sussex Council. We understand, and I would say are expert at valuing and reflecting the different communities that are already within our city, from the North Lane to Patcham, from Portslade to Saltdean. We already acknowledge that many of the places within our city have a varied identity. And of course, as others have said, I strongly welcome the inclusion of Falmouth Village in our proposals. The village is beloved by many residents. It's the kind of place where when my mum would be cooking a Christmas dinner, all the kids would be taken around Falmouth Pond for a walk to get out of her hair, would enjoy the charming Falmouth Village on a Christmas Day walk. As Councillor Mouton said, we're improving transport links, the new 23 bus service starting on Sunday. Our administration has unlocked £400,000 for the restoration of Falmouth Village Pond, which every heat wave gets absolutely decimated and results in loss of wildlife and biodiversity. So this shows we're already, taking pretty seriously that we can benefit the residents of Falmouth, and I hope we'll extend that to the residents of Peacehaven and Telscombe too. One resident of Falmouth told me they would be better served by a Brighton Hove City councillor than a Lewis District councillor. This was before these proposals and this work stream came up. Because in areas like licensing, planning, and the environmental management of our farming portfolio, they simply have no voice and no representation here at Hove Town Hall. So this will help solve that. Since becoming the ward councillor for Wooding Dean in 2023, I reached out proactively and started building a constructive relationship with Falmouth Parish Council. And I look forward to widening that relationship and to broadening out that relationship with many of you here today. And finally, Chair, Falmouth Parish has had 9 crop circles in recent years, some simple and some very elaborate. Clearly, East Sussex have not been sharing their engagement with the extraterrestrials. And when the aliens next land in Falmouth and disembark their spaceship and say, "Take me to your leader," it's to Councillor Sankey's office they should be brought. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen, for that illuminating contribution. Councillor Wilkins, did you want to come back in? Yeah.
Yeah, just briefly, and I suppose speaking to residents over on the, in the area that we're proposing would merge with Brighton and Hove. When residents are concerned about Brighton and Hove City Council services, often the historic issues with bin collections is front and centre of their minds. Pleased to say that's very much improving, but I would also just like to put on record that only a few weeks ago I was out personally on a bin collection round in West Saltdean, and I'd be very happy to extend such such a visit to residents of East Saltdean should our proposal go forward. And I'd also like to suggest that it's probably quite unlikely that were they part of a large East Sussex unitary authority, they might well struggle to get the relevant cabinet member to personally pick up their bins from wherever they're based. So just to put that on record.
Thanks, Councillor Akins. Any other comments or contributions on local government? Councillor Miller.
A couple of brief positives. I think something we need to stress is how much our council is delivering for our residents. We have lower council tax than residents are paying in East Sussex, and yet, as an example, we have more libraries per capita. And it is really, really important to remember how much having a unitary authority allows you to deliver better services, because less money is spent on backroom administration. This is taking money to frontline services, and that's something that needs to be remembered and needs to be stressed. And we deliver for our residents despite historically bad decisions like the I-360. We are still delivering, and we are delivering every day. And where we're not succeeding, we're working hard to change. And I genuinely think that this is something which will bring benefit to the residents of Saltdean and East Saltdean. And finally, when I was visiting Saltdean Lido, the fantastic team there with the CIC who restored it commented on how difficult it is to tell families from East Saltdean that actually they are not eligible for the free child swimming, which West Saltdean residents are. And this is the kind of thing that we deliver. So I strongly support this, and I think we can bring benefit to these residents.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miller. Any other comments or questions from colleagues? Councillor Robbins.
Yeah, I'll be very brief, because everybody else has been has said everything, and I wasn't going to say anything because I thought, well, everything's been said, but then I thought, well, it's never stopped you in the past, so give it a go anyway. And I was just going to say that when I was a young man, when I first become aware of local governments about 50 years ago, in Port Slade, there was 13 councillors representing a town about a mile wide by about 3 miles long. And that was the world then. It's not the world now. It's a different world, and we need to move on, and we need to look at things differently. And I listened to all the counter arguments last night, and they were all over the place. Somebody saying that a friend of theirs had told them that somebody had told him, that a bloke round the road had told him that we weren't consulting here, we weren't consulting there. Somebody else said, you've spent all your time consulting with these people, you've never consulted. It was just all over the place. So I think really all I want to say is this seems to me to be the most sensible way forward. And I applaud both John and Bella. I know how much work they put into it and how they've put themselves on the line and been shouted at and all sorts of things. So that's really all I've got to say. And I've only really said that because I don't know really how to keep quiet sometimes. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much, Councillor Robbins. Any other comments or contributions from colleagues? No, in which case I'll just make a few, I suppose, sort of final remarks before we go to a decision on this. This local government reorganisation process has certainly been a journey. This is not something that has been initiated by Brighton and Hove Council, but as I hope everybody appreciates, this is something that our Labour government has asked us to deliver on. I am a passionate advocate of unitary local government. Leading a council at present that delivers over 700 services to residents, I can see the power and the potential of holistic, joined-up service delivery to improve residents' lives. And I actually think that as a unitary council that's only been, just over 25 years in existence, we've only just got started. I think there have been things that have held this council back, not least conservative austerity for so many years of our existence. The fact that we were a council under no overall control for such a long period of time that obviously has an impact on decision making and being able to really deliver and be responsive to residents. But I really believe in the power of unitary government, and I think there are so many amazing, excellent examples in terms of what this council already delivers. I have sought to take this message to colleagues in the wider Sussex footprint who currently exist with a two-tier council system. And it's fair to say some are more receptive than others. I think there are a great many councillors in the two-tier system that do see the waste and inefficiency and duplication that that system creates, not least sometimes the examples of, you know, a councillor that may be a councillor in both a district and a borough, as well as a county councillor, receiving queries from residents, having to tell them to actually email their other councillor address so that they can address that particular query because it's not us that deals with potholes, it's this council, or whatever the example might be, that just creates bureaucracy, time wasting, inefficiency, and means we're not ultimately getting on and delivering as best as we can for our residents, which is why we are ultimately all here and what I know so many of us are so motivated by. So I think there are a lot of councillors elsewhere in Sussex that do understand that. I think it's important not to shy away from the fact that local government reorganisation is not universally loved. And from my understanding, historically, it has always aroused strong emotions, passions, and agreement in some places, consensus in some places, and disagreement in others. And that is clearly the case also here in Sussex, in this example. At every step, I've sought to be transparent, open and collaborative with neighbouring authorities. I have asked leaders from across Sussex to meet regularly to talk about local government reorganisation. Some have been receptive, some have been less receptive to that. But I'm really clear that we are still on this journey. As colleagues have said, today we are making a decision about what we want to propose to government based on the very detailed evidence-based work that we have done, the engagement and consultation we've been able to do with our own residents. And we are making a proposition and a proposal, but this journey still has a significant amount of time to run. It will be for government to decide which of the differing proposals that seem to be going in it decides to take forward. And then there will be a really important statutory consultation led by the government to which all residents across Brighton and Hove, East Sussex and West Sussex will be able to respond and to have their say. So to those that are concerned at the moment that there has not been enough time for consultation, for discussion, for analysis of the proposals, they will ultimately be put alongside each other so residents can really clearly see the pros and cons of each to form a view and to respond and have their voice heard. And it's really important that we keep resident voice at the heart of this process. I think everyone else has covered really ably the proposal that we've put forward and what the potential advantages of it are. And so I'm not going to dwell on that any longer. I'm going to ask colleagues now whether they would like to accept the recommendations in the report. Agreed. Thank you. We will move on now to the next item today, which is the King Alfred Leisure Centre regeneration project, and I'm going to ask Councillor Robbins to present this item.
Thank you very much, Chair. And before I do, I'd like to thank so much, 5 of them sitting over there, and hopefully with their opening, and also Councillors Taylor and Robinson and Cattell, who've been to a lot of the meetings. High degree of control and certainty over the cost of the project once the main contractor was appointed. This is explained in more detail in the paper. Following their appointment at the start of the year, the professional team have been working with officers to develop a detailed design proposal for the new facility. Those proposals are based on a specification set out in the Council Sports Facility Investment Plan. However, they include some carefully considered changes to the facility mix to reflect current and projected future trends in the sector. The proposals also take into account the challenges and constraints of the site. Throughout the process, the team and officers have regularly briefed members, and the designs set out in today's papers reflect feedback and the direction that we have given them. The designs presented in the paper today reflect the team's work up to the end of our RIB Stage 2 concept design. The paper sets these out in more detail and recommends that the Cabinet agrees the recommendations to proceed. The paper also sets out updated financial implications of the projects. These implications reflect new land valuations for the site, which suggest that much higher capital receipt will be realised from the disposal of part of the site for residential development than had been proposed in the paper last year. The figures also reflect updated revenue estimates for the new facility, which are also notably higher than estimated last year. The total capital cost of the project has increased with the estimated proposed in last year's, while some of the increase is due to the cost of inflation in the construction sector. It also reflects the general enhanced specification of the new facility, with a much larger fitness suite and other features described in the paper. It also includes the cost of the development of a new area of regenerated public realm to form an entrance plaza to the facility. However, the increased revenue this enhanced specification will generate, together with a higher projected capital receipts, significantly reduces the annual revenue cost to the council. This means that although the initial capital investment is greater, the annual revenue cost will be less than proposed in last year's paper. I am seeking the Cabinet's agreement to move forward to the next stage of the project. Cabinet is therefore asked to agree the following recommendations. To agree that the design team progress further to design proposals presented in Appendix 1 and delegates authority to the Corporate Director, City Operations, in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Sport, Recreation and Libraries to proceed with the submission of the planning application based on these designs. To approve the indicative capital budget for the project of up to 65 billion to be included in the medium-term capital investment programme to be funded from a combination of capital receipts, government grants and council borrowing. To approve an allocation of a further 2.3 million for those of these resources, in addition to 2.7 million agreed in July 2024 Cabinet for professional fees, surveys and investigations relating to the development of the design proposals through RIB Stage 3, including submission of planning application, and RIB Stage 4 with enabling works. To approve the demolition of the redundant parts of the site, which the current facility and car park site between the current facility and the car park, so enabled works for the new facility regeneration of public realm can come forward. Over the last 9 months, the design team has developed a proposal which makes best use of the site to deliver an iconic new facility, a facility which meets the city's needs now and for decades to come. Furthermore, the team's viability work shows that the revenue generated by the proposed enhanced specification will make the facility much more affordable to the council. In summing up, the proposals represent the best practical and viable solution to the challenges of delivering the new King Alfred, and the project as a whole represents a historic opportunity to deliver a facility that the city needs and deserves. I am now happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Councillor Robbins. Councillor Allen.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So for nearly a quarter of a century, the King Alfred Leisure Centre, for nearly a century, the King Alfred Leisure Centre has stood as a form of landmark on our seafront. And visiting the King Alfred Leisure Centre as a child in the early 2000s, by then it felt tired and in need of a refresh. So it's extremely welcome that after a quarter of a century, we're now ready to embark on this exciting project. We often say that we're a listening council, and this is an excellent example of that being put into action. As the report says, over 3,600 responses to public engagement, plus workshops, drop-ins, and targeted work with grassroots clubs. But how is that fit into the proposals? So thorough accessibility considerations, inclusive fitness opportunities, and high quality design were all areas where residents wanted to see come through. And I'm happy to say that those have been incorporated into the design really well, I think. I watched the sterling performance of colleagues, including Councillor Robbins and Councillor Taylor, explaining this project to the Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee earlier in the week.
And the leisure together, and the finances just didn't work, and they fell over. Which is why it's taken 25 years to get here. So yes, we're releasing a chunk of land to provide, which will provide much needed housing and will help fund this development. But by this, the approach that we've taken means we're in control of the leisure design and build. Have done an absolutely fantastic job, and that kept working on this. That since the original agreement in July 2024, they've worked up the design, and we're getting more for less money. As the cost to our revenue budget is going to be less than it from the July 24 iteration. And then finally, with my procurement and contract management head on, I'm really happy to read in the commercial arrangements the financial controls that have been put in place, such as introducing cost consultants to ensure value for money, to ensure value for money by reviewing each of the REBA stages to make sure that the costs remain on budget. So I think this is fantastic news for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Robbins, and to officers who I've been working with on this project, but for leading all this work. I wanted to pick up on something that Councillor Allen said, and I don't like to talk about people who are no longer in the meeting, so I won't talk about the person, but it was notable and significant today that the Green Party are formally calling for us to pause this project, and I think it's an instructive moment, and indeed some of the comments that we got in scrutiny were instructive and revealing, because so often we get the comments from the opposition councillors, and particularly the Green Party, that why don't you stop this? Why don't we pause this? Why don't we think a bit more about this? Why don't we consult a bit more on this? Why don't we look at this from a different perspective or have another working group or meeting? It seems to be the default on everything, and that perhaps explains some of their record when they're on the council. We have to take a step back and think about, we're the city council that, as Councillor Sankey says, provide by some measures 700 services, and there's lots of different things going across the city. What we can't do is get ourselves in the headspace of we're in difficult financial circumstances, therefore we can do nothing. That is the surefire way to get yourself into further decline as a city. Councillor Williams sometimes tells me about this, and she's quite right. I'm obviously the finance lead, and a lot of my time is spent thinking about the budget and the next budget. Councillor Williams, you've got to raise your sight and keep being ambitious for the city, whether it's housing and trying to reform the housing market in the city more, whether it's transport, in the bus network's right and the road network right, on sport and culture. We've got to keep raising our eyes at what do we do next 25 years for our children and their children. What do they need in the city? And in that context, it's just crazy to me that we would say we've got a viable scheme in front of here on the King Alfred. Yes, the costs have gone up, and I'll come on to that in a minute, but we must pause it because we're in difficult financial circumstances. No, we've got to keep moving and keep focusing and keep thinking what will bring growth and prosperity and health benefits and built environment and public realm benefits to the city. And as Councillor Allen says, that's what we're about as administration. Yes, we face lots of difficult circumstances and that consumes a lot of our time, but we also have to focus on the future of the city and getting key bits of investment right. And on that point, investment is key to all of it. Yes, it's a big amount of money. The amount of money has gone up from the previous estimate, as Councillor Robbins has said, although the way that it's being structured, the revised estimate of the capital receipt, the revised facilities mix and revenue estimates mean that the overall cost per year may go down slightly, but it's still a big amount of money and we have to acknowledge that. But it's a big amount of money, and that's what happens when you want to invest in things for the future. You do have to put up big amounts of money. And our job as city councillors and the city council is to make sure we're targeting those large investments at the things the city really needs. Housing, infrastructure, sports facilities for the next generation. And that's what we're doing. Just finally, I think the designs look great. I've spoken to lots of people who think the designs look great, including Councillor Loughran at committee, who's famously opinionated on design matters. She thought it looked fantastic. My mum thinks it looks fantastic, and so do many others, and there's been many positive comments online. We shouldn't pretend we're creating the Taj Mahal or a Trump casino in Vegas. We're creating a functional building that looks modern, it looks in keeping with the seafront, and that we can actually deliver. And that's the path that we're on, and I'm very supportive of the proposal today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Taylor. Oh, lots of hands. I'm going to come to Councillor Alexander first.
As one of the most active places in the country, in fact, I think we might be the most active or the second most active or something. And also, sadly, one of the places that has quite a huge health inequalities gap. I fully support the report, and I just think it's really exciting for our city to be having this brand spanking new leisure centre. And I think it's going to be so exciting that it will pull people from all over the city to come and visit. I know families, my family's in sort of Moulscombe, they all love to go swimming, and you know, it'll be really exciting for them to take the bus to the new leisure centre. I think it's just brilliant. I also really welcome the amount of engagement that's taken place with community groups, including disability groups so far. I think that's brilliant. And I wanted to pull out from the report the following. From an equalities perspective, the engagement work and the equalities impact assessment have shown that a new facility will provide the potential to improve inclusivity and remove barriers to participation in active leisure. For example, a purpose-built new facility will have improved access for disabled people, including those being easier to navigate for blind and visually impaired users, which arose as a theme during the engagement. Similarly, some women, faith groups and older people we spoke to indicated a wish for greater privacy in changing areas, studios and swimming pools, which can be provided with the new facility. So I do actually have a question, Councillor Robbins, for you. Will there be a changing places facility designed within the new centre?
Thanks very much, Councillor Alexander. And you're right about the most active city in the country, but it was rather awkwardly described as the least inactive. I don't quite know why it was described as that, but that means the same thing as the most active. So we'll put that right. And as to your question, yes, there will be at least one changing places facility within the new building. So at least one and possibly more.
Councillor Mooting.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Allen, for Councillor Robbins. My apologies. Start again. Yeah, Councillor Robbins, for your presentation. I do appreciate that. As Councillor Taylor set out, the Green Party I think in this meeting are calling for delay. I fully agree with Councillor Taylor. We do not need to delay, no further delay. We need to raise our sights and keep our focus on the future of our city. This brings me to reflect on some historical wider context before I ask a couple of questions for you, Councillor Robbins. So despite concerns by the then Commission for Architecture and the Built Environment, or CABE, the 2006 Gary plans were approved, but were not taken forward. Now, that has led to some 20 years of delay. In the meantime, the ageing King Alfred is not improved in shape, shall we say. But I'm noting and reflecting on what looks like quite a rigorous campaign that's grown up over the last 12 months to try and retain these ageing and unkempt buildings. And often in that campaign, they reference the Saltine Lido, the 1930s Art Deco swimming facility, which has been restored. And yet, the King Alfred was not, as it is now, it wasn't a purpose-built single entity, but rather new blocks have been added at different decades, from the 1930s, when it was first established, through to the 1980s. So the comparison doesn't seem quite right. So the present buildings are looking old, unkempt, and weary. Failures in boilers and water supply have led to closures and ever-increasing costs to keep it going. This brings the question whether it would or could make financial sense to viably refurbish the ageing structure. Something which I personally don't think seems to be the logical thing to do. So I certainly think the proposals presented here today are so much better use of resource and everything. But I'd be very interested to perhaps a comment on that effect, Councillor Robbins. But I also want to just pick up on a couple of other points. So in section 4.2, the Cabinet report, the design proposals are at this stage to represent the work of design team up to the end of rebirth stage 2. That's concept design. And the question I've got within the concept design, what we know at this point in time, is related to size. And so is the proposed leisure centre the same size as the existing facility? And I'd like to clarify that point. Two further questions, or actually one particular question. As you're fully aware, the A259 active travel route will be passing this location. We've done some consultation. I'll be bringing the outcomes from that consultation later this autumn, I believe, into November Cabinet meeting. But there's certainly some positive responses which I'm able to present at that then Cabinet. But if we're to encourage more people to actively travel, walking and cycling and accessible routes to this new facility, I'd be very keen to understand to what extent do we have cycle parking and enabling that access for cyclists in particular, but all forms of active travel. And the other point I want to reference is to do public transport. Now, I've in conversation with our principal bus operator, Brighton Hove buses, we have some advanced conversations around what could be. Now, we do already have the number 700 route that does pass by there from the centre of town all the way through to the west, goes all the way along the coast as far as well, I think some routes goes further than Worthing, even further than that. But there's the 700 routes is established. But in conversation with Brighton Hove buses, we want to work with them. And I've had met with them, and they're happy for me to say this, work with them to extend the existing number 7 route, which is one of our routes, will be fully electric vehicle route, so zero emission buses, which presently runs from George Street, Hove Station, through to centre of town, North Street, over to the marina. They're keen to look at how we can make that route extend from George Street down through to the King Alfred and loop round. And so there'll be a really good bus service, or bus services with the 700 as well, the 7, to connect residents by public transport to the new facility. So that there's more to update on that, but the conversations are advanced with that as well. So Councillor Robbins, I want to thank you, and perhaps you can pick up on 2 of those points. Thank you.
Yes, of course. I'll pick up on the 2 points you made, and thanks very much for the work you're doing with the bus company. I know that they are keen. They've spoken to me about how keen they are to sort of loop this in so that there is a bus that goes directly to the new site. In terms of square meterage, the new facility will give us about 10,250 square meters, which is space that is utilised much better than the space we have at the moment, which is why it's difficult to give a direct sort of comparison between the two, because the old facility has so much wasted space, over wide corridors, places that lead nowhere, odd bits and pieces all over the place. So it's difficult to do that direct comparison. But the space is used, and I don't know if one of the officers might expand on this. The space is used with so much more sense and so much more less wasted space that it's a difficult comparison to make. But I believe that the new facility will be at least equal, if not better. And it's true, you're dead right. I mean, they're telling us we're rushing this after 25 years. I mean, how does that add up? It's just madness. We're really pleased that we can now bring it on at pace and actually do something rather than endlessly talk about it and do nothing. As for the bicycle parking, it's again difficult to give you actual numbers. But I'm informed that the project transport and travel plan will be developed, as you know, when the planning application goes in. That all goes together, so that will give a far more accurate bicycle facility. I will ask officers if anyone wants to make any comment about the comparison of the size, and I think Max is going to say something. Sorry, Max.
Hi, yeah, Max Woodford, Director of Place. Absolutely, Councillor Robbins. The way the space has kind of worked is we've taken the collection of uses that we need, we've kind of put those together in the most sensible way that they sit together, and you then kind of put the skin around that effectively. So all of the uses are kind of planned to sit together in the most efficient way possible. We're not creating kind of, like you were saying, corridors to nowhere or storerooms that are in the wrong place and so they're empty. It's all much more kind of thought through and planned out. So, like I say, it's really difficult to do a like-for-like comparison of the current floor space versus the old floor space. What we do know, though, is obviously the scheme we were looking at previously, the cheaper scheme, we've definitely had an increase in floor space from that.
Thanks, Max. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. The residents of Goldsmith, I think, will thank Councillor Robinson for all the hard work from you and the entire leisure team, because it is a really, really well-beloved facility in its location. But I do know people who have now started, in other words, who actually, I can think of people living in Wishboard, for instance, who are actually travelling past the King Alfred because they're concerned about the facility and travel to the Prince Regent for swimming lessons. And this increases traffic. And I don't think this is an isolated case. I think this is quite common. I think there's a real appetite for having a modern, clean, hygienic and efficient and actually also quite attractive sports facility back in the west of the city, because I think the King Alfred has historic love, but is actually more loved in the idea than in the reality. And I'd like to say about those people who, the Green councillors who comment on how we're rushing this, it's been 25 years. And actually, if they had taken as much time thinking about the voting for the I-360 and funding that, we could actually have borrowed very little to pay for this. This is something which is so overdue, and yet they want us to pause this, even though the building is way past the end of its life and has had to be closed frequently because of major repair works to make it function. And yet that decision was taken so much more rapidly and such an ill-thought way. So perhaps the learning from this should actually be for the Green Party. They need to figure out when to think and when to pause and when when to actually look at the plan so that, yes, this needs to go forward. I think this is a fantastic plan. And I know our residents are right behind this, Councillor Newton's and mine. And thank you very much to everybody.
Thanks, Councillor Miller. Any more comments or questions on Councillor Robbins' presentation? No. Are Cabinet happy to agree the recommendations in the report? Agreed. Excellent. Thank you, colleagues. Our next item is the brilliant Brighton Business Improvement District, but I'm going to suggest that we take a short comfort break and return at 4 to consider the next 3 reports, final 3 reports. Thanks, everyone. We're going to get business underway again. So our next item is the corporate health, safety and wellbeing policy. No, it's not. It is Brilliant Brighton Business Improvement District, new ballot. Councillor Taylor, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to seek approval from Cabinet for the new Business Improvement District term that is due to commence on the 1st of July 2026 for 5 years. It's worth making clear, and in answer to a question that Councillor McClay didn't get to ask, but it's really important to set out that the bid is entirely business run and is business funded. It's not a function of the council, it's not a body of the council, it's independent and it's business driven, and that really applies to every element of it, including the inception of it and the governance of it. But the council does have a role in running the ballot of bid members, as well as administering the actual levy if the ballot was successful. Just a little bit of context on bids. They're pretty well established in the country, and they're a way of delivering additional benefits to commercial businesses within a defined geographic area. I think that bit's quite important. It's not a way of supporting existing services within a council by levying something. It's about levying a new amount of money from businesses to add additional benefits to a specific commercial area. Nationally, the bid network thinks there's about 347 bids nationally, representing over 133,000 businesses across the country. Brighton's first bid was commenced in 2006, with the current 5-year term ending in June 2026. It was formed to help create a thriving, safe, clean and vibrant city centre, and has been broadly successful. And we want to thank everyone at Brilliant Brighton Bid, including Gavin Stewart, who's a great partner of the council, for all the work they've been doing in recent years to make the centre of town and their bid area as thriving and prosperous as possible. I wanted to briefly answer some of the points that Councillor McClay raised earlier. I know she's had to leave, but she raised a number of important and valid points, also suggesting how can we keep working with the bid and perhaps work together on projects. One of the things she mentioned is a buy local campaign, and I can confirm that we are working on a buy local campaign and looking at the practicalities of that and how we can promote that to support our businesses. And we're also going to have a series of regular meetings with particularly city centre businesses, independent businesses, to hear from them. We've had one already and we're going to have more to come, to hear from them and understand their challenges and help support them as best we can. One of the ways we do that as a council is trying to get our basic services running as best as possible and improving, including litter picking and potholes and all the things that contribute to the accessibility and visual impact of the city centre. The bid aligns with the council plan, particularly a city to be proud of, but also a fair and inclusive city, and it also aligns with our economic plan that we published in 2023. The bid primarily supports small and medium-sized enterprises and micro businesses in the city centre, providing a programme of events and promotions that market the city as a destination for retail and hospitality. The bid's core team works closely with council departments to enhance the look and feel of the city. The bid also provides the city centre ambassadors that people may see when they go around the city to help the city be a place where people feel safe and welcome, and they provide a valuable service to city centre businesses. And those ambassadors in 24 recovered over £60,000 of stolen stock in the city centre, which obviously talks to the shoplifting point that I know a lot of businesses have raised as a concern in the city centre. So what are we actually discussing today, and what is the proposal? So the bid and the council jointly commissioned an options appraisal in autumn 2024, carried out by Locus Management Solutions, and the purpose of the study was to explore the viability of the current bid and the possibility of expanding it. Subsequently, in January 2025, the directors of the bid board met and agreed to initiate the process of bid renewal and to explore the viability of expanding the bid. to be clear again, it's not the council that can propose or tell the bid whether they must continue or expand or shrink. That is for the bid themselves as a board in consultation with their own businesses to determine. Following that board meeting, consultations took place in June and July 25 with all non-domestic ratepayers in the affected areas, included a focus on the geographical scope as well as the options for expansion. The consultations considered the following: the existing bid area, inclusion of upper floor commercial premises within the existing bid area, Sydney Street and Trafalgar Street, Queen's Road, and the remainder of the lanes. It's worth noting that there was a mixed response to the consultation, with some businesses in the existing bid seeing the value, others concerned about their own cost base and whether it was something they would look to be part of. And so what the board has concluded and is proposed is set out in section 3.16 of the report. The geography of the bid is largely unchanged, although a few changes that are set out in the report. The key aspect of the proposal is that the upper floor of commercial premises will now be included. In the current state, it's just the retail street level elements of the buildings within the bid. It's now going to be expanded to the commercial premises above. The bid levy will be at 2%, and the bid levy rates will be aligned to the rateable values of March 2025. This should yield a higher level of funding for the overall bid that will allow them to continue to do their activities and expand their activities. I would just say that whilst this report doesn't propose a vast expansion of the bid, and clearly that has to be driven by the businesses and whether they want to take part in it, it does not preclude future bids, and there may well be a case for bids in specific geographic areas or indeed specific sectors, and neither the council nor the existing bid board are ruling that out, and that's something we'll need to consider as a city. The report makes 3 recommendations that I ask Cabinet to support today. The Cabinet agrees to support the renewal of the bid for the period of July 26 to June 2031 on the basis that's set out in the report in 3.16 and 3.17. We're going to agree to delegate authority to the head of Cabinet Office to oversee the bid process and enter into the renewal of the bid operating agreement and associated documents. And the Cabinet agrees to post a notice of ballot on the 16th of October, pursuant to the Business Improvement District regulations. In other words, we agree to proceed with the balloting of members within the proposed district as to whether they do indeed want to renew and establish that bid. And I would ask Cabinet to support those recommendations.
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. Really clear. Councillor Alexander.
I just wanted to comment that I am very familiar with the bid, and I remember when it came in 2006, as I had a children's shop in Bond Street in the North Lane between 2003 and 2013, and I know there's at least one person in this chamber who bought their babies washable nappies from my shop. So and at the time I voted, I was one of the businesses that voted yes, because it did seem such a good idea. And yes, there is a small amount that each business has to pay each year, but I, as a business then, I thought it was very worthwhile because it paid for Christmas lights in the North Lane. It paid for really importantly, the security, which is, if you have a shop in the North Lane, you like to feel that you can have a radio and can radio for help if you need it, sort of thing. So I thoroughly support this because I think it's a great initiative.
That's great to hear, Councillor Alexander. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Having worked with bids in Westminster and the City of London, I got to see how transformational they could be for businesses, residents and visitors, from things like jet washing all the way up to promoting the brand of a place internationally. They can be really good for a location. Bids do amazing work promoting and enhancing areas to encourage investment, increase footfall, and fundamentally to improve the enjoyment of a space for everyone. And as Cabinet Member for Public Realm, that's really important to what I do. Councillor Maclay in her representation mentioned shoplifting being on the rise, and certainly the Sussex Police has recorded an increase in shoplifting. Some of that is because from the directive of our Labour government, there is no longer a threshold of £200 that needs to be met before the police will intervene in a shoplifting incident, which was completely the wrong direction for the previous government to go in. More on that, the Labour government is currently putting through legislation not only to crack down more on shoplifting, which for independent businesses like those in the lanes and the North Lanes can be incredibly damaging, but is also making it a standalone offence to assault retail workers in the workplace, which I think is a big step in the right direction. Because just like workers in a trade union, businesses in a bid pool their resources and work together to tackle collective challenges. And that is something that I think is a no-brainer for our administration to back. And so I agree with all of the recommendations in the report. I hope businesses will vote to agree to the renewal of the bid, and I look forward to working with them over the next few years to collectively tackle a lot of the challenges in our city centre.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Mutin.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to just generally show support for this paper and that bid proposal. I think it's a definite positive entity within our city centre, and I believe what they offer and bring to the shopping streets that they represent is really good. It enhances so many aspects of that area, but also the partnership with the Brighton Hove City Council. You referenced sorting out some of the highways, the pothole features, and all that. But actually, it can be a larger scale than that. So within this administration, we completed in 2023 the renewal of the Western Road, all the way from Montpellier Road right through to the clock tower. And that's made a transformational look and feel to that part of this bid area. And so there are things we can do in partnership to really lift the look and feel for this bid. So certainly, we'll support this paper and the proposal. I encourage members to really think to do the same. And just, I think the Western Road and Clock Tower improvements that we have delivered in the last completed within the last 2 years does show what can be done to improve this area, working in partnership with the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mutin. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as with my responsibility for tourism, I know how important the look and feel of the city is, and I feel that the money raised by the bid is absolutely vital for adding value to the centre of the city, the banners, the Christmas lights. These are things that would not be happening without the bid. And I think it's also fantastic that businesses are able to make a decision on the public realm in which they operate, to ensure that what they feel they need in order to thrive is something they can do. And I think it's a fantastic thing. I hope that we will be able to extend this further in the next few years so that more areas of the city are covered by this. But I am absolutely completely delighted that we are proposing to reballot, and that there is a good prospect of it actually being approved again. So I completely support this report.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Any other comments or questions? In which case, the Cabinet happy to agree the recommendations? Agreed. Thanks, everybody. Next item is the corporate health, safety and wellbeing policy. And I'm going to ask Councillor Allen to introduce us, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is the most important item we are discussing today. The refreshed corporate health, safety and wellbeing policy is a statement of our values as a Labour Council, that the welfare of our staff is not an afterthought, but is central to everything we do. That's why I was genuinely disappointed that not a single opposition councillor could think of any question of scrutiny for me today on this. Either they're completely happy with the policy, they're completely confident in my political abilities, or they're ambivalent towards this policy, and only 2 of those 3 options are acceptable to me. Without good working conditions and a good organisational culture for our staff, the local government reorganisation would be disorganised. The King Alfred Leisure Centre would be more like a King Canute Leisure Centre, and our work on the brilliant Brighton bid would not be very brilliant. As a major employer in the city, Brighton and Hove City Council has a duty to ensure that everyone who works here can do so safely, with dignity, and with their well-being supported. This policy takes learnings from across the organisation and takes a sobering look at some of the areas where things have fallen short. It provides a framework for meeting our aims for a learning organisation and a strong, healthy working culture. We're moving to a proactive safety culture, and that means being honest about past failings, learning from them, and embedding systems of accountability and support so that they're not repeated. As a Labour administration, the positive feedback from our trade unions is particularly delightful to receive. One trade union officer remarked that this is the best health, safety and wellbeing policy they have seen in this council. We all stood for election around this table because we want to do our bit for the city. The majority of staff feel the same way about their work. This organisation delivers over 700 services to residents, businesses, charities and visitors, and this policy will empower them to continue delivering in a safe and supported way. Of all the ideas put forward, of all the policies we'll discuss at Cabinet, from when we move to a Cabinet model all the way to when we're next up for election in 2027, this will be a positive, lasting piece of framework and operation that will hopefully continue as the bedrock for a lot of the work that not only we do, but that our successors do for years to come. And I welcome any questions or comments from colleagues.
Thanks very much, Councillor Allen, for this really important piece of work, and for all of the officers that have worked on this and all of the staff that have been involved in providing feedback and to helping to shape it. I'm going to come to Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment. This policy really clearly demonstrates our commitment to a psychologically safe environment for all our employees and our staff and our management. And may I add, it's a really great example of constructive and respectful engagement. Thank you for this paper.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Meaton? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Allen, for your bringing this paper today. There's so many aspects where we need to safeguard and ensure that people working for the council, be they directly or through a contract, are in a good place. And this paper really highlights the importance of that and brings about a real framework. And I think perhaps give an example, maybe to show what can be done and needs to be done. And that's to do with the successful Beyond the Uniform campaign that we're working with at NSL, our civil enforcement officers, or sometimes referred to as our traffic wardens. I'm a member of Patrol, which is Parking and Traffic Regulation outside London, Education Committee, and along with North Essex Parking Partnership, Brighton Hove City Council got the first prize in funding for a safety measures message around our parking enforcement officers who work on our streets of our city. And this campaign was launched in response to quite severe challenges that some of our officers were facing. So 53% of abuse directed at our parking officers came from uninvolved third parties. So they didn't know the people personally. They were getting abuse in the streets. And so recorded incidents of abuse have surged by more than 75% in 2024 compared with previous year, ranging from daily verbal insults to actually violent confrontations. And so this Beyond the Uniform was shined a light on the people that worked and their lives, and just personalising those things, and how we should be certainly kind but also the value that these officers provide in the communities that they're walking around. They actually often help people, and certainly are somebody to people to be valued within that process. And the campaign that with the money we won from the patrol award, we now have developed a national campaign, so rolling out that key message about being kind and meeting the people beyond the uniform. That's now gone to all local authorities around England. To promote this very important message. So it's great that this paper's coming in today. We can bring really high standards and strong messages from Brighton and Hove, which can actually spread to across the country to say, yeah, this is how we can do it. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Reed. I'm going to come to Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. So to you, Councillor Allen. This week I sat as I subbed on the Audit and Standards Committee, and in that committee there was it was reported that our absence had increased. It was above the target that we had, and it increased from 11.6 FTE to 11.6 from 11.33 the previous year. So whilst that was quite high, officers reported that was in line with other local authorities. What I'm delighted to hear, what you just said about the union saying that this was the best health and wellbeing policy that ever been put forward by this city. I'll be really looking forward to see the results in the next audit and standard committees on our absence, because I'm sure if we've got a happy staff, a well cared for staff, that the absence will go down. So I commend this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Any other comments from colleagues? No? In which case, just to say, really echo everything that Councillor Allen has said. Really thanks so much to officers for their work on this. I think we've had some good discussions internally about just how important this is and how much we want to set a new standard and make this a meaningful exercise. And thank you to staff for all they do for us day in, day out, and full acknowledgement that many roles in this council are absolutely not easy. Some of them are the toughest roles in public service, I would argue. So thank you to staff for all of their commitment and dedication and sacrifice and resilience. I'm going to move us on to what I think is now our final paper today, and that is...
Sorry, Chair, we need to...
Sorry, does Cabinet support the recommendation of the report? Agreed.
Agreed.
So our final item today is our rough sleeping and single homeless services commissioning paper, and I'm going to ask Councillor Nan in his Cabinet Advisor capacity to present this to us. Councillor Nan.
Thank you, Chair. So Brighton and Hove faces a particularly acute and pernicious homeless challenge, with the most visible and urgent impacts felt by those who are sleeping rough. Our street outreach service provides essential support to both residents experiencing rough sleeping and council's wider response. As the Chair noted in her introduction, our street outreach service plays a crucial role as the first point of contact for a resident reported sleeping rough. The team then maintains ongoing engagement with these residents and help to build trust and connections with them and other appropriate services. In addition, our street outreach service supports our severe weather emergency protocol response and coordinates 2 monthly snapshot street counts, and also plays a key role in delivering our official annual street count. The work provides valuable intelligence to support our approach to antisocial behaviour. To illustrate their impact, last year's official street count identified 76 residents sleeping rough in Brighton and Hove. That's double the average for the south east of England. Over the past 2 years, our street outreach service has worked with 1,200 individuals, with half successfully supported to move away from rough sleeping. This report asks Cabinet to approve the recommissioning of the street outreach service. 3 options have been considered. The first was to recommission the service. Second was to cease the service completely, and third was to bring the service back in-house.
Only option 1, recommissioning, was found to align with the Council's emerging strategic priorities and broader ambition to achieve homes for everyone, also to provide essential continuity of service. With Cabinet's agreement, a competitive tendering for this service will begin in April 2026, be subject to standard procurement procedures. Officers are committed to recommissioning a service that incorporates the voices of those with lived experience and operates in line with current best practice principles, including trauma-informed approaches. The street outreach service is not only vital, in many cases it's life-saving, and I hope Cabinet will approve this recommissioning.
Thanks very much, Councillor Nan. Comments or questions from colleagues? Councillor Mooton.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Chair. So, yeah, in understanding what the options are here and recommissioning the service, can I just confirm whether it's delivering the same level of service as we have now, and will it still deliver our severe weather emergency protocol, for instance, SWEP, and just really check in with you on this to say with this option that you're presenting and you indicate a preferred option you'd like us to go forward with, will that deliver the same level of service or will it be improved in some way? How's your thoughts in relation to what we have previously and what we would have with this?
Could I defer to Harry on this one, as he's more likely to give an accurate answer than I would?
Thank you, Councillor. Hello, I'm Harry Williams, Director of Housing for People Services. So the service will be broadly like for like and deliver a similar type of service that we're providing at the moment. Obviously, the recommissioning process provides an opportunity for us to reflect on national best practice and the models that we might want to adopt within the new tender. The procurement exercise itself allows for that competition for different providers, also to present different ways of working and ideas. But broadly speaking, it will be the same model that we have at the moment.
Thanks very much, Harry, and thanks, Councillor Meads, for the question. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to support the recommissioning service. It is such a complex and difficult service to deliver. And I think, much as I'm always in favour of bringing things in-house where possible, I think trying to do this ourselves would result in such either, I think, a reduced quality of service or a huge cost. And I think it is a difficult and vital service to deliver. And I think we need to recommission it and ensure that we have that specialist knowledge delivering service. And so I would recommend this report.
Thanks very much. Councillor Miller, any other comments or questions? Councillor Taylor?
Just very quick comment to take the opportunity to thank both Paul as our Cabinet advisor on this subject, and of course Jill as Cabinet member, but then really the officers working on this, and indeed all services in the city that are working to support and prevent homelessness. And I think it's also a good opportunity to say something that isn't always said, which is that rough sleepers are not a problem or an issue that we need to shoo away or is associated with antisocial behaviour or something that we should be trying to hide in the city. What we've got to tackle is the underlying scourge of homelessness and the broken housing market. And so I'm really supportive of our homelessness services in the city, and I know that they work tirelessly to support people that are facing homelessness and rough sleeping, not try to shoo them away or hide them, but genuinely support them, genuinely try and prevent homelessness, and genuinely try and provide a route to getting into settled accommodation. So I just want to say a big thank you to both officers and the broader set of voluntary CVS and other organisations in the city that work on that issue for the city on behalf of all of us.
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Nam.
I didn't mention this in the introduction. It is one of. I don't think it's not what the support outreach service are for directly, but they do play an incredibly important role in providing a service to our residents as well. And that's not because the residents can ring and the street outreach service will come and tidy up the rough sleepers. I think seeing a person rough sleeping is incredibly distressing. And I get a lot of reports of rough sleepers to me. And they always ask, what should they do? And there's always an element of panic in the request. You know, I don't know what to do. And to be able to say, here is a web page that you can report this person on. There are people who will come and attend to this person. It provides our residents as well, our house residents, with a kind of psychological safety net, because it is incredibly distressing to see people rough sleeping. So I didn't mention that in the introduction, but I think it is an important thing to note about an added value of the service.
Thanks, Councillor Nunn. I think that is a really important point. And I would just add, of the different options that were explored here, I think we have arrived at the right one for the reasons given in the report. I'm glad that we are recommissioning the full service and not part of the service. My goodness me, do we need the full service still? I think the points around this not being the moment to bring this in-house are well made. I know that I received very positive feedback about the provider, their links with the voluntary sector, the dynamic way in which they work, the level of experience, insight, and lived experience as well, which is so important in this area in terms of connecting, building trust, and being able to really provide meaningful support to people. So I think this is a good option. And before we go to a decision, because I don't think there's any further comments, I think it's really important to say this at this moment in 2025, in the context of still a huge national housing crisis and so many sort of breakdowns in how our society functions that have left so many people in such a vulnerable situation that we have so many rough sleepers in the city. This is not inevitable. This is not how it has to be. And indeed, when the Labour Party last left government, rough sleeping in the city was down to the single figures. We must continue to be ambitious and to say that we want to end rough sleeping, and we need to keep making that our target and working towards that. We must not accept that this is inevitable and that we must always have such high numbers of people in such a precarious position. So just to make that really clear, we absolutely need the service, but the goal is to one day not need this service or need much less of it because there is not such a dire need. So if there's no further comments or questions, does Cabinet accept the recommendations in the report? Agreed. Thanks very much. I'd just like to finish, I think that's the end, by saying that I really very much appreciate all of the work that has gone into all of the papers today by officers. I really want to pay tribute to the quality of the reports. I'd also like to put on record my sincere thanks to our consultants on local government reorganisation, Ignite Consulting, who've done absolutely outstanding work, really difficult and complex work, and I think have delivered a very high quality proposal on local government reorganisation. The knowledge and insight and capacity for hard work that they brought to this project and working under very tight timescales was hugely impressive. So sincere thanks from all of us to Ignite. Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. I call this meeting to a close.